All right, so get this. We're diving into some seriously wild stuff today. North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine
Yep.
alongside Russia. It's like something out of a movie,
Yeah.
but it's happening right now, and it's a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is fascinating. The
Yeah.
it's a fascinating turn of events
Yeah.
because we're not just talking about weapons deals anymore. This is boots on the ground. A real commitment from North Korea to back up Russia's play in Ukraine.
Yeah, this isn't just some headline that'll be old news tomorrow. We're talking about the possibility of this war getting even bigger, more complicated, and the human cost is impossible to ignore. We've got reports, and these are coming from South Korean intelligence, by the way, that North Korean troops are already in the thick of it.
And they're not just there for show. Tragically, we've already seen reports of casualties. 6 North Korean officers were potentially killed in the Ukrainian missile strike in Donetsk.
Wow.
This really underscores the stakes for North Korea. These aren't theoretical allies. They're sending their people into a war zone.
Right, and it makes you wonder, what's in it for North Korea? I mean, they're already practically a hermit kingdom. Why jump into this mess, especially alongside a country that's facing so much global heat?
Yeah, it's a gamble, that's for sure. Kim Jong-un is playing a high-risk game here. There are a few things likely motivating this move. For one, North Korea's economy is in shambles. Russia's probably offering them a lifeline. Cold, hard cash in exchange for military support.
Okay, that makes sense. Desperate times,
Yeah.
desperate measures, right?
Exactly. But it goes beyond just money. North Korea is always looking to boost its military tech. Partnering with Russia gives them a chance to get their hands on some advanced weaponry. Plus, let's be real, having a powerful friend like Russia on your side provides a certain amount of protection, especially when you're as isolated as North Korea.
Yeah, it's like, you don't mess with my friend because then you mess with me.
Precisely. By siding with Russia, Kim Jong-un is sending a message to the U.S., to South Korea, to the world. He's not backing down. He's betting on a Russian victory, hoping it'll strengthen his own position on the global stage.
And remember that defense pact they signed back in June? Back then? It seemed like a lot of tough talk, but now...
It's taking on a whole new meaning, isn't it? That agreement, while vague on the specifics, committed both countries to supporting each other by all available means in case of an attack, sending troops, well, that certainly qualifies. This was a move nobody saw coming, and it changes the entire game.
It's like they went from holding hands to doing a full-on truss fall off the building.
A rather dramatic way to put it, but you're not wrong.
And it's not just the troops. Don't forget, North Korea has already been accused of supplying Russia with weapons and ammo under the radar. This is a full-blown alliance in action.
And that should be concerning to a lot of people.
But here's the thing. This alliance, it's a huge gamble. Even for a country known for taking risks, this could backfire on North Korea big time.
Absolutely. Imagine, if you will, being in Kim Jong-un's shoes for a second. You're relying on a country that's already facing a ton of international pressure, a country that's heavily sanctioned, a country that's bogged down in a war. They might not even win. Not exactly the most reliable partner.
It's like hitching your wagon to a, well, sputtering rocket. You hope it'll blast you into space, but it's just as likely to explode on the launch pad.
Exactly. And this has serious implications for the whole world, not just Russia and North Korea.
Right. Let's talk about South Korea for a minute. They must be freaking out right now.
You can bet they are. Imagine being South Korea. You're a modern democracy, a U.S. ally, and right next door, you've got your hostile, isolated neighbors suddenly armed to the teeth by one of the world's biggest military powers. Talk about a diplomatic nightmare.
I'm getting anxiety just thinking about it. And speaking of the U.S., how are they dealing with this whole situation?
The U.S. is watching very closely, and they're definitely not thrilled. They see this alliance as a direct challenge. Think about it. Russia and China are already getting cozy, trying to push back against U.S. influence around the world.
Yeah.
North Korea is jumping into the mix, making a power play alongside Russia. It's like a big geopolitical tug of war, and the rope just got a whole lot more tense.
And Ukraine is stuck right in the middle of it all.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so dangerous. This conflict has the potential to spiral out of control fast.
Okay, now you're making me nervous. Worst case scenario. What happens if this thing blows up even more?
Well, we're already seeing hints of it. Accusations of Ukrainian attacks on Russian soil, for example.
Yeah.
If Russia feels like they're backed into a corner, they might be tempted to lash out, to escalate things even further. And if that happens, there's a real risk of NATO getting directly involved.
And then it's a whole new ballgame, right? A terrifying one. Where does North Korea fit into that scenario? Would they actually go to war with NATO?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's unlikely North Korea would actively join a war against NATO. Too risky,
Mm-mm.
even for them. But even the threat of North Korean involvement is a major headache. It would force the U.S. and its allies to devote resources, to spread themselves thinner, all while dealing with a very real and very dangerous conflict in Europe.
So even if they're not on the front lines, North Korea is still a wild card that could make a bad situation infinitely worse.
Exactly. And we can't lose sight of the bigger picture here. This isn't just about military strategy or political maneuvering. This is about people's lives.
Right. Ukrainian families are fighting to survive. Russian families are struggling with the fallout of sanctions. And now, North Korean families are sending their loved ones to a war zone thousands of miles away. It's easy to get caught up in the geopolitical drama of it all. But at the end of the day, this is about human lives being torn apart by conflict. It's easy to feel overwhelmed with all of this, like there's so much happening, and the stakes are incredibly high. So, what should we be paying attention to as this whole situation unfolds? What are the big things to watch out for?
That's a great question. I think one thing to watch is how this alliance between Russia and North Korea actually functions. Like, is this a true partnership, or is North Korea basically becoming Russia's puppet? And so keep an eye out for signs of strain.
Of North Korea chafing under the weight of Russia's
Oh,
demands,
interesting.
which could make things even more unpredictable.
Yeah, like a high wire act, right? They're
They
both
think.
trying to balance their own interests,
Yeah.
and it only takes one misstep for everything to come crashing down. Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't forget the global response. Like, what can the international community do to cool things down? Is there any hope of diplomacy working in this situation? Or are we just hurtling towards a bigger conflict? These are questions that keep diplomats up at night.
So much of this feels so outside of our control. Like we're just watching a slow motion train wreck. But we can't just bury our heads in the sand, right?
You've hit the nail on the head. We can't just sit back and watch this unfold. Staying informed, understanding the complexities of this situation, thinking critically about the information we're consuming, that's where we have power.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. This isn't just about countries on a map or political games. This is about real people with real families
Mm.
whose lives are being turned upside down by these decisions.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict, and it highlights the urgent need for peaceful solutions.
Well said. And to our listeners, we'll leave you with this. How do you think this shakeup in power Russia and North Korea joining forces will reshape the world? Not just in the coming months, but years down the line. It's a question worth pondering. Until next time, keep asking the tough questions.